Hello everyone, assalamu alaikum. So here we see the cart product notifier, and this looks for a product ID. The product ID, as we work on this, so it's gonna get the product ID and update the UI, as you can see over here. So it updates the UI. Now this part has been done using Riverpod, this cart product notifier. Now we want to do it using Cubit, and at the same time we want to learn the similarities between Riverpod and Cubit, because personally I think Riverpod and Cubit are very similar. So if you are Riverpod background, then actually you can use Cubit, or if you already know Cubit, you can also learn Riverpod. So let me show you. So the first thing I'm going to do over here, this extend over here, this one. So it creates a provider for us using this class. So we're going to remove this. So let's go ahead and remove this. Here we are going to have Cubit, but you need to make sure that your Flutter block package is installed. All right, and then what type to extend over here inside the Cubit itself. Now that part actually we're gonna get from here, the build method. We see that the build method returns a list. A list of what? A list of strings. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this and put it here. Okay. So you can understand, like over here, the type inherence, a type reference, just like the build method over here. Okay, so with this, we can actually remove this. Fine. And then it will throw in another error. And it wants you to call superclass constructor. So just like build method over here, we have to pass null over here. So let's go ahead and first call superclass constructor and pass actually empty string, not null. Okay, right. So you see the error is gone. So with this, we do see that the build method, the Cubit takes the type, it's same as our build method. And then how about this one? Actually, this part is pretty easy. Now, since we are using Cubit, so instead of having assigned this state variable to this state, so we can actually emit the state. And how to do that? That's pretty easy. We're gonna just take this part from here, and then put inside this, and that's all. Okay, so in Riverpod you get to assign the complete state variable, and if you have something new, you inside into that one, you assert into that one, and assign to the state variable over here. So that's how it works. Now everything else should work like this. So I'm going to take this, and then here I'm going to emit like this. And so as you see, they are very similar. So that's why I feel like that Riverpod and Cubit, if you know how to write them correctly, so they would be very similar. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this. We don't need this. Now with this, our Cubit is ready. Okay. And then what about this part? So we're going to remove both of this. We don't need any of them now. And in fact, we also don't need this Riverpod annotation package. So we can remove this. And then now let's come over here. Now we do see that we have few errors, but that's of course in different places we are using the Riverpod provider, so we don't need to use them anymore. So we're gonna replace all these places using Cubit. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so one of the options that over here we're going to have is this one. Now we do see that we have few errors, so let's go and fix them. Now earlier it was like ref.watch, and you got it and you use it, right? But of course we don't have it. So what we are going to actually remove this using context. So instead of ref, we are going to use context, and instead of watch over here, we are going to use read. And then instead of this getting this notify provider, we're gonna actually call this cart notify, this class. So as you can see, they are so similar, right? And then I'm gonna get the state object. Then I don't need this last part, so I can comment that out. All right. Okay, now our error is gone. So that's the first error that we have solved. Just to remind you one more time, since we are learning the similarities, so here ref is replaced by context, watch is replaced by read, and this is your provider. In our case, this is our qubit, and then we of course have to get the state because ref.watch returns a state. All right, so now let's go ahead over here. The same thing, right? So what we could do, we can just simply go ahead and copy this in all these places, and then we are going to so it's just simple replacing. So our error has been solved over here, and the same thing over here. So it is trying to read the notifier provider and pass a product ID, right? So here we're going to exactly do the same. Whatever we have copied, we're going to put here, and then beautiful. So it should make sense to you that how things work. One more time. So let me help you get through it quickly. So ref context read, and this is our qubit, this is our provider. Now since we are calling a method, they need a notifier, but in our case we are just using this one. And also you may wonder, then what is this notifier and how it is same as qubit? Now do remember, if we go to qubit, here we have emit state, right? So emit function. So you can understand this notifier is same as emitting. Okay, so every time you need to call a Riverpod function, then you have to call this notifier, right? So this is same as exactly this emit. So that's how the similarities work. So it's easy. If you're learning between Cubit and Riverpod, you'll find that it's super easy. All right, so now let's go to our toggle button over here. And we might have one or two issues. So looks like there are a lot of errors. So I'm going to be quick and replace them so that I don't need to explain it anymore. I think I have already explained the basic stuff. So now upon restarting, it gets this error. It says that cart notifier provider is not found about this cart view. So of course, this is a new qubit or block, so we need to inject it. So let's go ahead and do that. So as we actually boot up our app over here, so let's go ahead and inject it. So over here, also block provider and create. And here we're gonna call cart notifier provider, and we need to invoke it. And okay, so now let's go ahead and restart it. So we have another place that we need to inject it. The reason is because our app might be using this cart notifier provider throughout this lifecycle in many different places, so we need to keep it always in the memory. And since we are using SL, so over here we're going to inject it with register factory, and then over here we're going to call it cart notifier provider. Okay. So now we see that everything is available, so we can reduce the number, and we can update the screen, and we can reduce again. We can update the screen, we can increase, we can update. If we want to delete, we can remove the item. So that's how it works. All right, so the idea is it's very easy to replace Riverpod with Cubit or Cubit with Riverpod. So all you need to take care of the build method and how the build method returns. And instead of assigning state to state, you need to use emit. And then since we are using Cubit, so we need to inject it in two different places. In when you boot up your app within this multi-block provider, And at the same time, you also need to find it in your inject controller where you inject all of your dependencies.